You are listening to the People Centric Podcast, where we talk through the toughest challenges that people face at work and give practical advice to fixing those challenges. Thanks for joining our movement to create workplaces that are happier, healthier, aligned, and empowered by putting people at the center of all that we do.
Hello again, people-centric leaders, back with another episode. Diana, I think this is episode, according to the invite, I think it's at episode number 185.
That's
Does that sound right? 185, 186, something like that. This episode, I don't know when you're listening to it, but this is due to drop on May 15th. So if you caught it on the day one, welcome. Like, you're a true fan.
True fan.
You're on the ready, right? I don't know if we send alerts out or whatever that says, hey, new episode. I think I get those sometimes through email, like a new episode just came out on YouTube or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, after 185 episodes, sometimes we go through this process of like, have we done something on this? Have we done something on that? And this might be one that we've touched on briefly before. But I don't know that we've ever actually done something like this. And, you know, whenever I say the title of it, this idea of email etiquette, it almost sounds very 90s. It almost sounds very 90s to me.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't love it.
Yeah, but people are still asking for it. This is something that people actually asked us to talk about. And let me give you an example. I'm going to share a quick story, if it's okay. Can I tell you guys a story? Let's start here. There's a hospital that we worked with, and as I got to meet, I'm going to protect the innocent. I'm not going to say the name of the hospital. I'm not going to say the name of the person, although I know she's a listener and she's probably going to say, "Hey, I heard you talk about me," and I might get that text message, but. Anyway, she's a great leader at this hospital, and she and I have become friends. And one of the first projects, if you can call it that she and I worked on, maybe a little personally and specifically to her, was, listen, she came to me and she said, listen, I'm kind of have this reputation. I kind of have this reputation of being a jerk. Of just being a jerk. And she said, and I don't know how many people that describes so far, but she said, I don't like that reputation of being jerk. I understand I can be abrupt. I understand I can, maybe be short, but I don't like the reputation of being jerk. Can you help me with that? No?
I'm
Diana,
really
you're shaking
tired
your
of jumping on a podcast and then you coding things
head.
and making it sound like it's a client when it's really me. I'm so sick of
Right.
it. Can you
Right.
stop?
Okay. So total transparency. It's not Diana, but it absolutely could be Diana. It absolutely could be Diana.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, she said, can you help me with that? I don't want that. I don't want that persona of being a jerk within the organization. And so one of the simple things that we started to do was she would start forwarding me her emails that she wanted to craft and send out to her team or to the organization. And she would say, hey, can you proofread this? Not to change any of the content about it. She's very smart. She's great. But to change, maybe look at the tone, to look at the tone. And this is an interesting concept that we talk about with email too, because you lose all sense of tone with that, or it's just so generic that it leaves so much room to explore for the recipient to be able to read into that. It reminds me. We're not going to play it or anything like that. We're not endorsed or sponsored by them, but Key and Peele have a great comedy snippet video. If you look at Key and Peele's comedy videos, and they have a text message exchange where they're going back and forth and they are reading it in very, very different tones. Same thing as the email, right? I have to consider the tone. And that's one of the things that she did. She started to send me the emails. Can you take a look at this? And then I was able to read it. And as I read it, I might think like, ooh, that sounded kind of aggressive, or, ooh, I'm not sure. What are you going for? What are we hoping to happen after they receive the email? And she would say, oh, well, this is what I'm trying to do. And I was able to say things like, well, then I would remove this line. I don't think you need to say this, right? And let's adjust that. And then I would send it back to her and kind of soften the tone. I love the humility in that, first of all, of her to be able to say, listen, I know I can come across like this. I don't want to come across like this. Can you read it? And the humility to say, okay, take that take that off. And she was, humble enough to say, okay, I'm not trying to go, I'll delete that part. I'm fine. She was actively trying to work on this. And so this is something that we're going to talk about today. Email etiquette is going to be kind of the baseline for where we start. Like we have some simple to-dos and simple throwouts there, but I think it's really kind of a part of a bigger communication conversation, right? So it's just Diana and I today. We like to do this on our own. Everybody wanted to come, but we said, no, you're not allowed. This is that's actually not
Booted
true. We're
them.
like, is anybody going to do a podcast today? Who's going to do that podcast? And so Diana and I hopped on, and this is the topic that was presented to us, and this is that thing that we're going to talk about. And I think we can make it cool, Diana.
Yeah, I mean, it does sound very like, oh my God, who even uses email anymore? But, but okay,
Right.
let's talk about it.
And if you're like me, who uses email, just video call them, right? Just video
Just
call them and get it
anytime, day or night,
anytime, day or
there you
night.
go. Yeah.
Video call them, like you want the
Mhm.
whole picture there. So anyway, let's start the conversation. Maybe there. So when we're talking about, actually, I'm going to back up for just a second. I don't know who else's emails look like this. Diane and I were talking about this, but I know what my email looks like whenever I go to the email. What does your email look like? Like what types of emails are you getting now? What dominates your inbox?
If you had asked me this like 5 years ago, it was internal emails, like internal stuff. It was from you, it was from Don, it was from, just things I needed to know. Clients had a bunch of stuff in there. And then there was like spam and hotel reservation confirmation stuff.
Yeah.
But now it's mostly spam. Like it's mostly junk. I get a few things from email or from clients, a few things from listeners. Um, but nothing unmanageable, right? It's like 10 a day from clients and listeners. It's not like the 100 I get a day from just spam and junk. Like I don't know how we as a society decided that if I buy something from a website, I then get 2 emails a day from you for the rest of my life. I hate it. But that's
Yeah.
where we're at.
Yeah. I mean,
That's where we're
honestly,
at.
I am transparently. If you're watching us on YouTube, if you're seeing the video of this, I'm reading my emails right now. I have one that's a webinar, April Fool's prank, RSVP to Mike Vandenbraden. Brandon, this is a vendor that at some conference that I saw. Big Speak is another one that I got there. Again, it's just a spammy marketing thing. My third email is from Uber. Which I don't need that, right? Now, my fourth email, just a little self-serving. It is from the Bolivar Chamber of Commerce. Commerce. They did ask me to speak tomorrow, and it's the email blast saying, "Hey, Matt Griswold, People Centric is going to be here." So I'll file that one and save that one, maybe right there. But then it's like, I mean, First Light Safety, Great Wolf Lodge, like it's all spam, marketing stuff. I'm
Yeah.
with you. And so I don't know. Do you have yours up? I'm just curious. What
Yeah. Mine is our accountant, our financial advisor, a client, someone requesting to be an intern,
oh
um, someone asking for a proposal. That probably should have gone to you. Uh,
yeah. Yeah.
um, but then it's like leadership Springfield. We have stuff from the Chateau on the Lake. Like it's just I have
Yeah.
some bookkeeping stuff. Someone shared a video. Like it's just
Yeah. I mean,
nothing pressing comes through email anymore.
listen, the emails make me want to just control a delete everything. And it drives you batty, right?
It does
Just
drive me
drives you
batty.
batty. So
Yeah.
anyway, we're gonna kind of start here from a jumping off point, but we might give you some alternative options for how you should maybe attack communication within the workplace. But let's just specifically handle the email etiquette. And there's maybe let's just do it like this, Diana. What if I give a couple of tips, 2 or 3 tips, and then you can give 2 or 3 tips, and I think we
Yeah.
maybe have covered it, right?
Yeah.
For
I
email, but
agree
then
with
let's
that.
transition the conversation and go into
Yes.
something else. So as far
Yes.
as far as I'm concerned, I would say here's a couple of tips for email. If you feel like that you do need to send the email, I would again ask those first couple of questions like, what's the point of sending the email? What am I hoping that they take from receiving this email? Are there any action items I need them to follow up after the email is concerned there too? Like I want to I want to put some thought into that too. And
Mhm.
I'm gonna also give you a tip on maybe what not to do because it's what I do. And I'm not a great emailer. In fact, I don't read your emails most of the time unless it's something fairly pressing there. just have a hard time. I have a hard time with it. But one of the things I've noticed, I speak at a lot of conferences, and the event coordinators, and I know we have some of those listening too, they're probably going to be like, hey, man, I can't believe Matt is saying this. Instead of one handy dandy tidy email of all the different things that I need or would like, or bullet points or things like that, I'm not kidding you. I can go through and look at some of the exchanges I've had with some of these people putting on, and I bet you there's 35 different emails that I've sent back and forth to them like, hey, can I have two mics? Send. Hey, can we make sure there's audio? Send.
Matt,
Like, hey,
no. Don't do
hey,
that to
how many?
people.
I know. So maybe I don't realize it's happening at the time, but I treat email almost more like instant messenger.
Hmm.
Like, hey, here's a quick thought, send.
So this is
Um,
a don't do that,
yeah,
right?
that's a don't do that. That's a
Okay,
don't
yeah.
do that. Maybe try to spend some time and think like, here's the thing. How can I craft this in a way that might cover more bases and instead of one liner? So that's a Matt
Yeah.
fail that you can maybe learn from my mistakes. But what do you have?
Well, I think mine are a little general. I don't know. I have this rule that if I've gone back and forth with someone over email 3 times, that I then have to pick up the phone because it's no longer working in email. It cannot be solved in an email. You need to call them. And so I have like a weird internal measure of like how many times have I gone back and forth with this human being over an email, and at what point do I need to pick up the phone? And so I'm like, be cautious about that type of communication. It's not as thorough, it's not as quick, it's not as easy as maybe picking up the phone might be. Um, the other thing I do is this might lead to the sort of bigger conversation, but I don't assign intent to words in an email. I am an abrupt emailer. I'm very direct. I type what's in my brain. I like to give context. I like bullet points. So I'm like a direct human being when I email things. And I know that when they're sent off, sometimes it sounds mean. Like, oh my gosh, Diana just asked me like for 4 things and didn't even say thank you. And just like, there was no smiley face emojis in this email. It was just an email. And
Yeah,
so,
so annoying.
my rule is not to assign intent to the tone of an email because that has gotten me in trouble before,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
Um, Signing it. We also have. If you're curious to know more about that topic, I know we've done podcasts on that.
Good.
So
Yeah,
assigning intent and assuming why people are doing the things that they're doing is probably something you'd want to check out there too. I think those are good rules. We have the
yeah,
other things like the reply all. Do I need to really
yeah.
reply all? Maybe they'll get the point if I just use all bold red letters, right? And those types of things. Don't do that. Don't
Don't do
do
that.
those types of things. I
Yeah.
remember. I remember working with a hospital, and this happened in a manufacturing company too. That maybe this is a good time to say this. We don't just work in healthcare. My wife edits the podcast. She goes, "Man, all your examples are in healthcare. We're all over the place.
We're
Manufacturing
all over.
companies. I mean, lots of different types of industries. But one of the frustrating things that I heard from people was like when the second shift got there, like in the evening or whatever, the late afternoon, their first handful of emails were like, "Hey, there's donuts in the break room from 8 o'clock in the morning." And you know what's not in the break room anymore at 5 o'clock when I start my shift?
Freaking donuts. They're
Freaking
gone.
donuts. They're all
They're
gone. And
gone.
then I have to
Yep.
read all the reply alls of thanking everybody for the donuts. And wow, those were delicious donuts. But I didn't get any freaking donuts at all because I got here, second. So that was one of it was kind of comical, but I get it. It's just frustrating and it's just noise. It's
Yeah.
just noise that you have to
Yeah.
then filter out. So maybe this takes us to that next part of the conversation. If you have other specific questions about email etiquette, feel free to let us know. We'd be happy to entertain those. But I'm going to move this topic to a different conversation. I just said this idea of like, man, it's just filling the inbox with noise, and a lot of the things that I get through inbox now are just it's noise and it's hard to keep separated. And we did a thing not too long ago. That's been it feels not too long now. It's been a few years now, I guess, but where we started to look for and maybe answer some of these questions like, man, there's got to be a better way for us to internally communicate, internally about internal things, but also internally about external things too. Like there's got to be a better way to be able to format and filter and organize. And so we launched into this idea of teams. Diana, I don't know it. I'm not a part of any of those conversations. Like, hey, should we look into this or should we not? It
Yeah.
just appears, and then Diana sends one of those hateful emails that she talks about, like, Matt, you have to start using this now. This is
Yep.
what you will do with your life now, right?
Yep.
But it's
Figure
been,
it out.
but it's been great. You want to talk about maybe why we went, like, were we frustrated with email or what happened?
Yeah, so I think there was a whole bunch of things that happened all at once. We used email to communicate internally, like, hey Matt, I need your lunch order for whatever. And also, hey Matt, I need information about this client, like what's going on there. So we used all of that in email. And so it got crazy, like 50, 60, 70 emails in half a day about 100 different things, right? And so it was crazy.
Yeah.
And so we started to say, like, okay, well, what if we do something with the subject line to make it searchable? And what if we like copy and paste and file and move all of these things? And it just got really cumbersome. And then the pandemic hit, and we all were like, okay, well, now we need video conferencing and we need all of these things. So, anyway, a bunch of things just sort of happened for us to be like, okay, now it is time to change the tools that we're using to better communicate and better serve our needs. And that could be, I don't care what tool you use. It could be Slack, it could be Teams, it could be Monday.com, Asana. There's a bunch of them.
Yeah.
But the simple fact is that email doesn't have to be the place where your team communicates. And I think if it is, that's a problem. Your team should not be communicating about everything via email. It's just too cumbersome. You have too many other things that are noise, and it's going to get buried and lost.
I know that I hear this a lot because we say this at conferences, like, yeah, we switched to Teams, and there's always somebody in the audience that it seems like it goes a couple different ways where they've also switched to Teams and they love it. And then there's somebody else in the audience who's like, ugh, we switched to Teams, we freaking hate it. Why
Yeah.
would somebody hate something like that? And I'll kind of spoiler alert, like a lot of times they don't have it. And again, I'm
That's
talking
right.
about stuff I don't know about, but a
Yeah.
lot of times they don't have it quote unquote set up correctly. What does
That's
that
right.
even mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think when you are setting up tools like that and you're trying to figure out the best way to communicate, you need to think about how communication flows through your organization. So when we set up teams and we set up our communication channels, we are very deliberate about it. I made it match our file structure. I made it match the flow of the organization. I made it match the flow of the client. Like there is a structure and an organization to it so that it is not chaos. And now, no one is allowed to change that structure but me. So
Yeah.
it's locked down. You can't cause chaos in my very organized place. But I think that's something that a lot of organizations miss when they launch things like this. They don't think about how is this going to flow from start to finish? How should this flow from start to finish? And what bigger buckets do we need to separate out so that people are communicating in the right places about the right things?
Something else that I noticed that we did, and this might be a good communication tip also for the folks, is we don't necessarily give everybody access to all the different things, right? Like there's some of
Yeah.
those folders in there that I probably don't have. I don't know what I don't know, right? I don't
Yeah.
know if I have access to those things, but some of those things I don't need access to these things, or nor do I want access to those things because then it's just busier and like
Yep.
we can set it up in a way where I see the things that I need to see, and then also have access to the things that I need to have access to, but it's not filled with all the other operational junk, for lack of a better word, that I would not necessarily
The junk
use.
that is very important
The
to
junk
me.
that you live in, yeah, those are the ones that I'm like, hey, I need this, and you'll know right where it is, but I don't have access to those some of those things or the conversations. If you know, you and Don have certain places where you guys just go and which is fine, but I think that's all part of the setup, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
there's a couple of different ways, probably some traps that organizations could maybe get into, going, you know what, I've noticed since we started working hybrid, the email has gotten even crazier, right? Because those impromptu office visits where people are just bumping into each other, all of those conversations, if you don't have a tool like this, all of those little conversations now just became emails, right? And
Yeah.
and, and it's like, holy moly, this is cumbersome. And so you're probably going, okay, we need to look into see maybe whatever tool. Look, we use Teams, doesn't have to be Teams. Diana just said there's so many different ones out there, but maybe there's a better option for you all. And I think one of the first tips would be checking the functionality of what does this do? What do we need it to do? And then bring your team along for the ride as well, right? There's got to
Yeah.
be some
Yeah.
training involved with that. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And they probably have good ideas for how to solve some of this stuff, right? They're the ones doing the communicating. So they probably have some ideas. When we did this, it was me, Don, and Bethany who were looking at things and kind of saying like these are the options and some people use this and some people use this. We didn't bring everybody in, right? You said you didn't have any say in that or whatever because we knew like you don't really care.
I
You're
don't
going to
want,
be
yeah,
fine
I
with
don't care.
whatever. Yeah. So, so yeah, like I think it's there probably should be like some brainstorming and a committee and asking some questions and some collaboration so that one person isn't just building it based off their experience of work. Because if I built everything based off how I experience work, Matt would hate his life
Yeah.
because we don't do the same job. And so I have to
Yeah.
think about how Matt experiences work and what he's going to be able to do to set all of that up well.
Yeah, I just need to know where the stuff that I need is. Yeah, and it's funny. This is true. This is a true story. There for a while, I thought I had my own special folder that nobody else had access to, but I realized Don and Diana, everybody had it. It's right here.
Yeah.
You click on it right there, and I was just hoarding all this information there, not in a bad way, but I made one folder with everything that I typically need for my role,
Yeah.
and I didn't realize that it was something everybody also had.
Definitely a
Everybody could
public
see
folder.
everything that I was hiding. Um, That's right. Hiding's the wrong word, but
Definitely a
I thought
public
it was
folder.
just it's this. I don't have my computer. I have to get to my folder, and Don's like, "You mean this one? Like, how did you get that? How did you get that information?" So anyway, I think it's important, but the topic that we were talking about today was email etiquette. I think we covered that. I think it's time to maybe look and see if most of your information is coming through email. It's probably time to be able to look at another communication tool. I think Diana gave some great tips about maybe how to preface that the findings of that tool and maybe determine which tool is maybe the best one for you to be able to operate within. Um, other than that, though, I mean, we talked about bringing the team along for the ride so that they're also aware of that. I don't know. Do you think we've covered this enough, or do you think there's any questions that the people want to know about this that we're not talking
I
about?
mean, I'm sure someone's gonna call and be like, yeah, but when do you reply all? Right? Someone's gonna say that. But I think the real message is communication is difficult in any situation. No one platform or one thing is going to be the end all cure all be all for communication, right? So you have to intentionally think about the thing you're trying to get across, how that's going to come across to who you're communicating to, and you need to change your communication style to best reflect those things. So be intentional with communication, I think is really the key here. It's
Yeah,
not
and
about the email. It's the
intentional, and I think that we hear this a lot too. Organizations get caught up in the next shiny thing, so it's like, oh
yeah.
yeah, no, we should be super great at communication because we have Teams and we have Slack and we have Asana and we have Trello and we have email and we have text and we have, and it's overwhelming, especially for our manufacturing friends who also have to carry around a walkie-talkie all the time, and they're handling
Yeah.
things like that, and then they don't really have the computer thing there too. So just be
Yeah.
careful about the next shiny thing. Just because you have more of does not mean that you are killing it. I think the last part that I'll share with this is whatever tools you're choosing to use, maybe just have some sort of alignment with the team on under what circumstances am I using which tools. Like it's this
Yep.
communication method conversation. So, under what circumstances do I call Diana or text Diana or email Diana or video call Diana or put something in Trello and hope Diana sees that? Or, I mean, under what
Yeah.
circumstances do I use those things? And, maybe we could just help our people succeed a little bit more if we're on the same page as far as when do I use these tools that you've given me? Thank you for all the tools, but when do I use these tools? And can we just maybe come to some sort of an agreement?
Yeah, I think that's huge for sure. I call them modes of communication, right? There's so many modes of communication. When do I use what?
Hmm.
When you're
Yeah.
right. When do I text you? When do I video call you? And I
Yeah.
think in our case, since we're small, it's easy to just be like, oh, I'll just video call Matt, right? Like, no
Mhm.
big deal. But if you had 30 direct reports,
Right.
it's just you can't expect that every time. So yeah, I love that point.
Yeah. And if one of your main communication methods is sarcasm, it doesn't always play well in many of the different modes of
Man,
communication.
why
So
am
think
I
about
always
that.
attacked on these things?
So think about that. We love a good sarcastic comment, but just recognize that might not always be received well depending on the mode of communication that you're using. So
Okay, man.
all right then. Uh anyway, Diana, it was a pleasure. Thanks for joining me on this
Yeah.
podcast again. Guys, if you wanted to reach out to us, or we hear it all the time. Don and I cover the country, travel in different conferences, and we hear from you. Like, you guys love it, and we're glad that you love it. Feel free to share it, give us some feedback, and give us some other ideas on topics that you'd like to hear from us as well. But until next time, guys, we love you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to the People Centered Podcast. We are so grateful for you joining us every week. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. Also, feel free to share on your social media with everyone that you know. It really does help us. If you would like to contact us, I have put our information in the show notes. Please reach out anytime. We love hearing from you. We will be back next week with a new topic. Until then, be well and lead well.